I study Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism is basically a way of seeing, interpreting, and understanding the social world. Americans who embrace it believe that the United States has always been and always should be distinctively Christian in its national identity, its sacred symbols, and its public policies. What we're finding is that Christian nationalism is something altogether different from private religiosity. So I work with large surveys of the American public, and so we'll ask them a handful of questions having to do with Christian nationalism. We might ask them if the federal government should declare the U.S. a Christian nation, or we may even ask if they believe that the success of the United States is part of God's plan. And so in their responses to these individual questions, we're able to see how much they agree and embrace Christian nationalism or resist and reject it. And then when we ask them questions about public policies or their behaviors, we can compare, how they answer some of these questions versus where they fall within this spectrum on Christian nationalism. So one recent study, we find that for Americans who strongly embrace Christian nationalism, they're much more likely to believe that the police treat blacks the same as whites. Now what's interesting though, is that we find that Americans who strongly embrace private religiosity, they're much more likely to see racial inequality in policing. We also found in another study that Christian nationalism is strongly related to gun control attitudes. In fact, it's one of the strongest predictors, no matter your religious affiliation, political ideology, or your political party, where you live in the country. Americans who embrace Christian nationalism are much more likely to oppose any federal gun control regulation. And what's interesting here again is that Americans who are more religious privately, they're more likely to support gun control. We see that Americans who embrace Christian nationalism are more likely to draw specific boundaries around what America is all about, where we're going, who we should be, and how we should get there. Whereas private religiosity we see is operating in a very different way. To some extent, Americans who embrace Christian nationalism are aware of the same problems that we're all facing, but they would see that there are very different ways that we're supposed to work towards changing those. So with gun control, for instance, it isn't as though they want to say, let's not do anything at all, but they would say that it isn't up to us or even the government to control guns. We need to work on the individual hearts of Americans. We need to attend to, as they would see it, the unraveling of the moral fabric of the nation. And if we do that, then gun violence is going to decline. They see individual level change of individual hearts as the way to attend to some of these issues, rather than seeing perhaps that there are structural changes that we could make. The reaction towards this research should be greater understanding of where people are coming from so that we can dialogue together. I think much of the polarization within politics is people refusing to understand where people are coming from and having empathy for those views. When we talk about religious cultural frameworks, these aren't things that people just come up with on their own. They're given to them. And so understanding how somebody got from A to B may help us work together to find compromise towards a common goal. Nobody wants school shootings, and we all agree on that. But if we're to find a way forward on these important issues, we have to be able to understand and realize where they're coming from and those frameworks that they're using to make sense of their social world.